So the Mishnah that we learned and the Gemara that we learned was all about the Parei Hachag and the other sacrifices of the holiday. The Parei Hachag means the bulls of the holiday, and the other sacrifices of the holiday, and seems to be a very important topic. The bulls, the Gemara goes into it as to the Mishnah even says that whoever gets a bull one day can't get it the next day, and the Gemara also goes into who do they correspond to? Who do the bulls? Why do we have 70 bulls? And who are they corresponding to? The Gemara doesn't ask that about the other animals. It only asks it about the bulls. Seemingly, the reason why the Gemara is asking it specifically about the bulls is because the Gemara is surprised. The Gemara wants more of an explanation. Why are the bulls not in a very it's such an easy number? It's 70. They should be in a much easier a method of dividing them up between the days. It should be 10 each day instead of 13 and then 12 and then 11. So the Gemara says there must be something that it's corresponding to, and that's why it's going to be in this strange order where it's decreasing. In fact, the concept of decreasing the Parei Hachag, believe it or not, is mentioned when we talk about Hanukkah. And the Beis Hillel says that Hanukkah you're supposed to add a candle every night, and so therefore the first night of Hanukkah is one candle, second night is two candles. Beis Shammai says no, you got to start with 8 candles and every night go down one. So the first night of Hanukkah light 8, and then the second night light 7. He says, where do you get that from? So one of the explanations is I learned it from the Parei Hachag, from the bulls of Sukkot. What do you start with at the bulls of Sukkot? 13, and then it goes to 12, and then 11, then 10. So he says the same thing because Hanukkah should be 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Anyway, the bottom line is that the Mishnah deals with the division of how did they divide up the bulls, and another major part of the Mishnah is how did they divide up the sheep, because the sheep were some of the that's where you got more than you needed. In other words, everyone wanted a portion of the bulls, and therefore, therefore I should really say that the Mishnah's emphasis maybe is even more the sheep than on the bulls. That's interesting. In other words, the Mishnah starts dealing really with the sheep. There's extra sheep. So how do you divide up the sheep? And the Mishnah says how to divide it up. You divide it up because some of them get 2, some of them get 1. And the Mishnah goes on each day, depends on the day. Some days they had, each day they had less extras of the sheep because the bulls were less, so therefore the people who didn't get a bull got the sheep, and there was each day there was one less bull, so that means there was one more group of koyanim that needed a sheep, and so therefore there were less extra sheep each day, and at the final day of Sukkot, which is the 7th day, you just had one per family, per of the group, 48, the 24 groups, excuse me. There was 24 groups of Kohanim, and there were exactly 24 sacrifices. So on the 7th day of Sukkot, every group of Kohanim got one sacrifice. And then came the 8th day, and then they had even less than that. They didn't have 24 sacrifices to give one per group. And instead, on the 8th day, they were chazru lapayas. They went back and did some type of a raffle to allow whoever won the raffle to get it, because otherwise, how do you choose who's going to get it? You can't choose. There's a limited amount of sacrifices, very few sacrifices on Shmini Atzeres. You have one bull, you have one ram, and you have seven sheep and one he goat. I got, is that about 10? Maybe, yeah, it's 10 sacrifices, 7, 1, 1, and 1. Yeah. And one bull, one ram, one he goat, and then 7. So it's 7 plus 3 is 10. So you only have 10. You have 24 groups of Kayanim. So they made a raffle. Now, the Mishnah then says about the parim that the importance whoever got a par, you ain't getting the next day a par. That's it. You got a par today, you got to give the other people. Some of the groups got 3 times the par over the series of sukkahs, and there were 2 groups that only got it twice. Everyone else got it 3. They got it 3 times. And that was basically the Mishnah. The Mishnah goes through each day how many extra sheep there were. We have to go through each one. It's just a simple calculation. Actually, it is a little surprising to me that the Mishnah goes through it. Like seemingly, it's a little easy very easy calculation. I'm a little surprised why the Mishnah has to spell it out each day. There was extra sheep, and some of them got 2, and some of them got every family need to get at least 1. However extra there were, they got 2. So why does Mishnah have to go through each day? Could have made it be just said a set code. It is a little surprising to me. Yes, Jeffrey.
Well, I think that on the 8th day, they went back to the regular mishmar that was supposed to be for that week. Otherwise, it would have enumerated with that also. And the pious could be just among the people in that mishmar of whom will do the different tasks.
So are you answering my question, or you're just saying something else? You're answering my question. So why does the Mishnah go through day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6, day 7? I think it could have just said day 1 is this, and make sure every every family of Kayanim at least got 1 korban, and the extras, you get some of the families got extra sheep. That's it. Extra sheep.
If you say it specifically, then nobody's going to argue. Otherwise, somebody might have said, "Oh, we have more guys here in our mishmar. We have 200 guys. So you should let us have the bigger job," something like that. So each mishmar is still many people. So then by specifically saying it this way, then it's already agreed in advance that each mishmar, no matter how many people they have, they still just have this equality of representation.
I mean, I still think it could have just said day 1, day 2, day 3, and so on. Say etc. I think you would have figured it out after day 1 and day 2 and day 3. It has to go through day 4, day 5, day 6. Well, day 7. Day 7 is also pretty obvious. Day 7 is the easiest. What would you do on day 7? Day 7 for sure doesn't have to say. What other options are there? There's 0 extra sacrifices on day 7.
Correct.
Anyway, so to me, it's still surprising. I'm not so satisfied. I'm not getting your answer to be be stronger than the question. I like answers that are stronger than the question.
Right. We'll have to be more creative. But on the 8th day, then I think you just go back to the original.
Yeah, I understand the 8th day. It has to say the 8th day. That I'm not surprised that it mentions the 8th day. I'm surprised it mentions day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6, and day 7. Isn't that pretty obvious? I'm surprised the Gemara doesn't ask. It's Pshita. This is like this is obvious.
Doesn't the Chumash repeat?
True. So you want to say the Mishnah's really following the way it's written in the Chumash.
Because they asked the same question by the Chumash. Why doesn't the Chumash just say in the same, etc., by each individual korban? If it's repeated, why does the Chumash repeat?
Yeah,
Why doesn't it
the only
just
thing
say?
is you're confusing between Parshas Nasai and Parshas Ba'aloischa. Parshas Nasai talks about the Nasiim's sacrifices for 12 days from Rosh Chodesh Nisan until the 12th day through the 12th day of Nisan. And those sacrifices are exactly the same every single day. However,
you can make a Gezerah Shav. You could say the same way that it repeats there.
One second.
Even I understand it's different. But the same way that it repeats each day's korban, even though it could have said etc., why doesn't it say here where it's anything repetitive? You could have just said etc.
Right. So you can't really use the term Gzera Shava. Gzera Shava is something that's specifically a tradition about. But what you're saying is a similar idea that you could maybe learn from there. So what's the answer? Why by the Nasiim did it have to say each day? So one of the answers there is that each the karbanis of that day, even though physically they look the same, but spiritually it was a whole different revelation of the spiritual elements of each korban, because each korban was connected to the unique qualities of each shevet. So the shevet of Ruvain, the way they served Hashem, the way of Re'iyah, so that korban was somehow connected in the kavanas of the korban, even though the physical korban sacrifice looked the same. But spiritually, it reached different, pulled different strings in heaven, reached different levels of spiritual realms, and so therefore it repeats itself. Here, I think the Chumash needs to mention each one because the sacrifices do change. But the Mishnah is more trying to help you figure out how to divide it between the Shvatim. It doesn't really say about it doesn't really talk about the all the sacrifices on each day in the Mishnah. The Mishnah, all it's talking about is that B'Yom Chamishi Shnayim Akriven Shnayim. What do you do with the extras? That's all the Mishnah is dealing with. But so my point is that I don't know. I like your thought, David, that maybe it's following the mission. The Chumash set it up to say each day separately. So in other words, like Pesach, it doesn't say each day set. It doesn't say on the second day of Pesach and on the third day of Pesach and on the fourth day of Pesach. But it does do that on Sukkot. It mentions each day separately. And it has to do with if they were different karbanis on each day. Interestingly enough, there is a big mistake that people always miss out on. Every Shabbos Musaf, the Shabbos of Chol Hamoed Sukkos. You know what the most common mistake is in Shul? That you say at the end of the Haftarah, the bracha, Mekadesh HaShabbos, it's Chol Hamoed. But you say Mekadesh HaShabbos v'Yisrael v'Azmanim. It's a big mistake a lot of people make, is they just say Mekadesh HaShabbos, because Shabbos Chol Hamoed Pesach, you just say Mekadesh HaShabbos. Why? Because Shabbos Chol Hamoed Pesach, why are you saying a Haftarah? Because it's Shabbos, not because it's Pesach. It's Chol Hamoed. On Chol Hamoed, you don't read a Haftarah. So it's because it's Shabbos, you're reading the Haftarah. So you say Mekadesh Shabbos. That's how you end the Haftarah on Shabbos Cholamoid Pesach. On Shabbos Cholamoid Sukkos, guess what? You end off differently. Mekadesh Shabbos v'Yisrael v'Azmanim. You mention the holiday. What do you mean the holiday? It's Cholamoid. It's Shabbos Cholamoid, and Cholamoid does not require a Haftarah reading. It's because of Shabbos that I'm reading the Haftarah. I should end off Mekadesh Shabbos. No, you end off Mekadesh Shabbos v'Yisrael v'Azmanim because there are different sacrifices on each day, and because of the different sacrifices, and therefore we end off Mekadesh Shabbos v'Yisrael v'Azmanim. Interesting. So the Shabbos Shabbos Cholamoid Sukkos. Yeah, anyway, it's a common mistake they make. I've heard them not even corrected in some shuls. Yeah. Yes, Jeffrey.
In the reading for the maftir of Pesach, it says koele. It does make a generalization at the end. So it says koele tasul ayom. So it says we make it all this every day as the same, but
Okay.
Sukkot doesn't say.
Right.
It seems also like that the rabbis felt that the holiday of Sukkot was Ach Sameach. It's a different level from all the other holidays. Ach Sameach.
Ach Sameach.
Right, and so therefore it's the highest level of all the holidays. It's a culmination.
So, so what you're saying is maybe a reason why it's going to spell out each day in the Gemara, in the Mishnah, or you're saying that's why the Chumash spells out each day,
and that's why the bracha is different on Chol HaMoed. So there's several reasons, but
anyway, yeah, but okay, we'd have to look up if it mentions these other ideas. But anyway, I like very nice, nice thought of the maybe based on the Chumash dividing up the each day. I don't know. It's to me, it's a little surprising. The Mishnayos are always so concise, and here it's going and spelling it out at such length. Okay. Anyway, then the Mishnah says that the rabbis said whoever brought a bull on one day doesn't bring a bull the next day because we got to give a chance to all the other families of Kayanim that they should have a chance. So we go back to the order that we left off the next day and start from the new person who didn't get yesterday. They're the ones who get the next day the bulls to bring the bulls, and then you go in that order, and then you go back to the people who haven't gone a second time, and then you do all those people, and then you go to the people who haven't done it yet a third time. So that's the way. That's the way the bulls were divided. Then comes the Gemara, and the Gemara says that there's a discussion, and this is really where you see the bulls make a big deal out of the bulls, because two of the families of Kayanim did not have the opportunity to get it three times, to get a bull to get three bulls over Sukkot. Two of them only got twice. The other 22 families of Kayanim, again, there were 24 families, so 22 out of the 24 got a chance to do it three times. Two of them didn't. They only got to do it twice. They got a bull only twice. In other words, they got two bulls instead of three. And the Gemara brings a brisa where Rebbe and the rabbis debate when Shmini Atzeres comes along and there's one bull that's going to be brought for that holiday. should we give it to one of those two? Should we specifically give it to one of those two that missed out in getting a third bull? We should give it to one of those two, or should we just make a raffle for the whole families of Kayanim, all the 24, choose one of them, one out of 24? Or should we choose one out of the two that missed out? And this is an argument. The opinion of Rebbe is that you just start all over fresh, and those two missed out. Okay, too bad. Now we're starting fresh, a new raffle. We're not taking into consideration who didn't get it on Sukkah. We're starting a new raffle. Betchila mafisin olav. In the beginning, we make an initial raffle as if we don't look at the past who missed out. We make a whole new raffle. The rabbis say, no, we got to take into consideration those two families who didn't get to do it 3 times, didn't get to 3 bulls. Let's give it to one of those two. That's what the rabbis say. One of those two should get it. So on Shmini Atzeres, we take into consideration who missed out, and we give it to one of those. And the Gemara says, so the Mishnah uses the term, you do a pious, you do this raffle. So it sounds like the opinion of Rebbe and not the rabbis, because Rebbe is the one who says, let's just do a whole raffle, see which one of the 24 should get the bull of Shmini Atzeres. And so the Mishnah sounds like it only fits with Rebbe, not the rabbis. And the Gemara says, no, but that's not so. Really, the Mishnah could fit with the rabbis as well. The rabbis' opinion. Why? Because even the rabbis hold that you got to do a raffle. They just don't say you do a raffle with 24 people in it. You do 24 families in it. You do a raffle with 2 families, because between those two who missed out, you got to do a raffle. How else are you going to figure out which one should be the one to get the bull? You need to have a raffle. In other words, initially it sounded like maybe the Gemara understood that maybe you would give it to the next one in line. And maybe that's why the Gemara thought it must be that the Mishnah is following Rebbe. Because the according to the rabbis, you give it to one of those two, meaning the next one in line, probably. And then the Gemara answers, I'm just sharing with you a thought that this maybe gives us an understanding. See, whenever you have a Gemara that asks a question and then answers the question, so you always have to go back to the question. Well, what were we thinking when we asked the question? If that's the answer, so what were they thinking before? Right? That's the way Gemara always works. Like that answer sounds very obvious. So if that answer sounds obvious, how did we think before the answer? So I'm mentioning maybe the Gemara's assumption was go according to the order. And that would be what the rabbis hold, because that's the way we went until now. We always were going according to the order of the Kayanim. See, there's families of Kayanim, and 24 families, there's a certain order. Yehoyariv came first. Then came Yedaya. Then came Chorim. And it's a list of 24 in the book of Divrei Hayamim, in the chapter 24 of Divrei Hayam. Believe it or not, it's interesting. It's chapter 24, and it's the 24 groups of Kayanim. Of course, the chapters were not made by the Yidden, but there's still a concept of hashgacha pratis. There is a concept of that even Hashem is everywhere, and even in unholy places. And so there's sometimes there's always a reason for everything, even if it was made by a guy. It still is divine providence. Anyway, so chapter 24 of Divrei Hayamim Aleph, the first book of Chronicles, has all the 24 families and the order of them. And so maybe that was the Gemara's thought, that it was thinking which one of the two families are going to get it. It's the order. You go in that order. And the Gemara's answer is no, you do a raffle. Those two missed out on Sukkot. And instead, you got to do a raffle now. What's the reason? Why would you do a raffle? We were always going in the order. Why now are we doing a raffle? So it seems that because the Shmini Atzeres one is officially not part of the Sukkot bulls. So you can't say that we should follow that same order. Each of these families is very nice. We're going to let one of the families have it, but really, both of them lost out. They missed out in the Sukkot. So we're giving them an opportunity to get it. We're going to give them, because they both really missed out, now is their opportunity to win it. So we got to give both of them an option. Otherwise, it's just going to be unfair to the last one. Here, it's sort of giving an opportunity. At least they're not definitely losing out. So that's what it seems like. Again, it's a little unclear what the Gemara's question was, what the Gemara's answer is, but that's what comes to mind, is that the Gemara understood it that way. Now, then the Gemara says another statement, another brisa, and the other brisa says that all of the mishmaros brought 3 bulls, except 2 of them, they only brought 2 bulls. So the Gemara says that brisa also sounds like it's only going according to Rebbe, because according to the rabbis, you don't exclude 2, you would exclude 1 that didn't get to bring a bull, because according to the rabbis, one of them actually gets to bring a bull on Shmini Atzeres. So why would we say except for the 2? Why would we say except for 2 of them that they only bring 2 bulls and not 3? We should say except one of the families they only bring, except one of the families that they only bring 2 bulls and not 3. So the Gemara says, yeah, the brisa is talking about Sukkos, and the Sukkos bull.
Okay.
Among the Sukkot bulls, those are the ones who there's 2 families that don't bring. Meaning this is not a Sukkot bull. This is not part of the bulls of Sukkot that are symbolic of something unique, which the Gemara soon will share. This is a different bull. It's a bull of Shmini Atzeres. And this bull we're going to let one of those families bring it, but really, in truth, it loses out of the something unique about the bulls of Sukkot that this is not part of. And again, here, to me, it seems like the Gemara is giving us some implication that there's something unique about the bulls of Sukkot that they all wanted a part of, that they all wanted to be in some sense to merit, to be able to be part of bringing those bulls. Like that's the Parei HaChag. Those are the Parei HaChag, and there's something special about them, and these people miss out. The 2 of them missed out in that. And what do we why does it tell us that? It gives us this calculation. We don't need it to give us the calculation. You could add it up yourself, that if there's 24 families and there's 70 bulls, so there's going to be you're going to miss out 2 from being able to bring 3 each, because 72 would be 24 times 3 would be 72, and you only have 70. You have 70 bulls and you have 24 groups. So you see already 20, you can make your own calculation that 2 are going to miss out being able to bring 3 bulls. So the Gemara answers that, what the reason why the brisa says this is because it's emphasizing whoever brings a bull today isn't able to bring it the next day. You got to give everyone a chance. And that when we run out, we run out. but everyone gets a chance to bring bulls, and we go in an order, and the end there'll be two that will miss out. So that was this first piece of Gemara. The next piece of Gemara mentions that what is Rabbi Elazar says, these 70 bulls, what do they correspond to? And the Gemara explains that they correspond to the 70 nations. The 70 nations are judged on water, and we bring bulls to atone for these nations that they should be able to get water. So we're doing like a atonement for the nations that they should be able to be blessed. So what's the one bull of Shmini Atzeres for? That corresponds to the Jewish people. Then one nation, one unique nation. That one bull is one unique nation. And what is this a parable for? A king of flesh and blood, he tells his servants, make for me a big meal. The last day, tells his friend, make for me a small meal. I want to enjoy your company. And this is, I think that's where we got up to, yeah. And so this is a interesting thing. He tells his servants, make a big meal, and then at the end he just says, make for me a small meal. And the big meal is for all the other nations, making a big meal. Then he says, I want to enjoy your company. Make for me a small meal so I can enjoy your company. It does seem a little surprising that the other group, that he's making a big meal at first and then a small meal afterwards. Why would you, like, I mean, obviously there's more people. There's more, it's for a bigger group. It's a Suda Gedola for the bigger group, so to speak. If the king had a lot of other people coming, so you're going to have a Suda Gedola. And then his friend, he's just going to have a small meal because it's only like one person. So that you could say maybe that's the meaning behind it. But the truth of the matter is, who gets those 70 bulls? First of all, the nations are not here in Beis Hamikdash. The nations are wherever they are. We're just bringing it for them, for their benefit. So we're the same people in the Beis Hamikdash. We're just doing it for them, and we're doing it for us. So what does it mean that that's the big meal and this is a small meal? Make for me a small meal, make for them a big meal. I mean, obviously there are 70 bulls, so that's a big meal. And here he's making a small meal. But seemingly, if he wants, seemingly he would tell his friend, make for me, let's make a big meal, and that I will enjoy for just for you, But he says, make for me a small meal. So there is a understanding here, a very practical part of social, sort of like a fact about socializing. When you have a delicious meal, when it's all about the food, so it's not necessarily so that your friendship is that strong. You make a big meal because you don't have so much in common. So at least they concentrate on the food. But when you have a close friend, so it's almost like the food is very minimal here. It's all about the company. When it's a close friend, it's more the company that's important. And so you tell them, make a small meal. All we want is one par. One bull is good. It's not about the food. It's the company. When it's the other nations where Hashem doesn't enjoy so much their company, so he's there. you need to have a lot of food because people don't have so much in common. So they need, in other words, Hashem is not so excited about the company. So it's, so to speak, the food is important. It's crucial in order to have, in order to include that group of people. But for a friend,
you don't
full meal.
You don't emphasize the quantity, you emphasize the quality.
Right, but it's also the quantity of what and the quality of what. Those the quantity of food, the quality of the time together. You know what I mean? It's two separate things.
Right, I'm saying that by the nations it's the quantity, and by the Jews it's the quality. So there's no need to emphasize the quantity.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't see how to word it that way. I would word it that by the Yidden, it's quality time, and by the Goyim, it's you don't have quality time, so you need the food. The food is a substitute for the quality.
That's what I'm saying.
The quantity of food is a substitute for the quality of time. But
Right,
anyway, it's an insight. Yeah.
Okay, that's what I'm saying, and the quality of the guest.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, but so anyway, it's not my own insight. That's the commentary seemed to mention that idea that the Suda Katana, the fact that it's a small meal, is because it's all about the company. It's not about the food. Anyway, it's an interesting little insight there. But the point that the Gemara makes here, as I mentioned earlier, seems to be that the Gemara is bothered with why 70 bulls in a order that goes from 13 all the way down to 7, and not that every day. Just bring 10 every day, you'll have the same 70. And so there must be something that it's corresponding to, and the Gemara answers that's corresponding to the 70 nations. And although the Gemara doesn't mention this, but the idea is that they're ultimately going to get less and less and less, and that's the nations of the world that they're going to diminish. And ultimately, when Mashiach comes, the only ones left will be the Yidden and the Chasidei Umay Sa'olam, the righteous ones of the nations of the world. And now we're up to the new Gemara. And the new Gemara is Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says, and this is maybe 10 lines up from the bottom of the page, maybe 11 lines up from the bottom of the page. It's on page 55b. 55b. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Oy lahem loivdei kochavim she'ibdu ve'ein yoidin ma she'ibdu. Woe to the nations of the world that they ruined the Beis Hamikdash. They destroyed the Beis Hamikdash, but they don't know what they destroyed. They don't realize the value of what they destroyed and how valuable it was for them. Bisman Beis Hamikdash Kayam, when the Beis Hamikdash was in existence, Mizbeach Mechaper Aleihen, the altar would atone for them. How would the altar atone for them? Because we brought 70 bulls for the 70 nations to pray for them, for their reign. For the altar would be a atonement for them. V'yachshav, and now they destroyed their own blessings. And now, mi mechaper aleihen, who's going to atone for them? There's no Beis Hamikdash. And so this is the foolishness of the nations, that they think they're destroying us. They're really hurting themselves. And that is the end of this discussion here about the bulls and the meaning behind it, the ultimate end to the Goyim, and the fact that they destroyed the Beis Hamikdash, and really they were hurting themselves. The Mishnah, the next Mishnah, it's talks about the division of the way the Koyanim, which Koyanim would get stuff. In other words, you divide that there's two elements to what the Koyanim would get on Yontiv. There's the sacrifices that were connected to the holiday, and there's sacrifices that are connected to the fact that this is just the regular sacrifices that are done on a daily basis. And so there's a difference between the two. The sacrifices that are connected to the holiday, those sacrifices, every kohen is eligible to participate in. However, the sacrifices that are connected to that week, there was a group that was meant. It was meant for that week's kohanim. They're the ones in charge. And you don't want to step on their toes. So they're the ones who get the rights of those sacrifices. So the Mishnah spells it out how this worked. So we're going to now start the Mishnah. Again, we're on page 55b, and we are about 9 lines up from the bottom of the page. Bishloisha prakim bashana, 3 times a year, which means on the 3 holidays. Hayu kol mishmarois shavos be'imurei haragolim. All the watches of the kohanim, meaning the groups of kohanim, families of the kohanim, 24 families, they were all equal in dividing up the parts of the sacrifices, the meat and the skins that were connected to the holidays. Everyone was equal, meaning everyone could get a portion of that. Ubechiluk lechem apanim, and also surprisingly, the division of the bread, the showbread, that division, which you would think has nothing to do with the holiday, believe it or not, that was divided to everyone. And they would divide, there was 12 breads. They would divide it up to between all the 24 groups of kohanim. And
what does Yontif have to do with that?
That's a very surprising law, but it's based on a pasuk, and because of a pasuk, they learns out that the lechem apanim was divided to everyone. But in logic, you're right. Really, the lechem apanim should have gone solely to the family of kohanim that was set for that week. You know, the week it was divided between the week who left and the week that arrived, and you would think those are the ones who should get it. And instead, our Mishnah mentions this, and it's learned from a pasuk that the kohanim, all of the 24 groups, get a portion of the lechem haponim. The Mishnah continues and says, "Ba'atzeres on Shavuos, what happens if Shabbos and Shavuos coincide?" So you have 2 types of breads. There's the breads of the lechem hapanim that are divided up, that was always divided up on Shabbos. And Shavuos is a time when you have 2 chametz breads, 2 breads that were leavened. And they were not brought on as a sacrifice, because you can't bring leavened breads as a sacrifice, but they would bring sacrifices, and that would sanctify the breads, and the breads would then be divided up. The 2 breads are called shtei halechem. These 2 breads were divided up amongst the kohanim. And so on Shavuos, you would make sure to give each person or each family the matzah bread and the chametz bread. What's the matzah bread? It's called the lechem hapanim, the showbreads. Those are matzah. They're not leavened, believe it or not. We call it lechem hapanim, but those were not chametz. Those were matzah. They were like halachically matzah. And the other bread was chametz. Now, one might think, well, I got a piece of the lechem apanim, and the other guy should get them the shtei alechem. Or the other guy got shtei alechem, one guy got shtei alechem, another guy should get the matzah, divided, like we did with Sukkot. One guy gets a bull, the other guy gets a sheep, the other guy gets the sin offering. The other family gets the sin offering. The Mishnah here says, Oimer loy, he says to him, when the kohen divides it, Heilach matzah, heilach chametz. Here is matzah, here is chametz. Meaning that you're supposed to give each one a little portion of the chametz and a little portion of the matzah, or the opposite. A little portion of the matzah, a little portion of the chametz. And that is an obligation. Don't think that you could divide it and say this one got chametz, that one, or they could make some deal. And don't think that or the people, the kohanim, shouldn't think that you're giving some this and some that. Make it clear. Tell them this is the matzah, this is the chametz, and you're giving each one both. There's a little discussion here in the commentaries. Is it, but possibly that it means, in other words, what is the Mishnah really saying? Is the Mishnah saying that that's what you got to tell the kohen, or in other words, in order to, it's like an obligation for you to make it known that this is matzah and this is chametz, and every kohen has to receive both, and the kohanim are not allowed to switch. In other words, is that the main point, that the kohanim aren't allowed to switch or in substitute? Or is it the main point that the kohanim should know that they got both? Is that why you're telling it to them? That they should know they got both. Not to imply to them that they're not allowed to switch and trade it, but that they see. Rashi says over here that lefi she'ein chotin carbon connected carbon, because you're not allowed to divide one carbon for another carbon. Ela mikol echad chelkai, each one, from each one its portion. And he says that because of that, lefichach moidian oisai, we tell it to them. So you tell it to them, implying like you make sure that they shouldn't, that of course you're not going to be substituting one for the other. And even you tell it to them, seems like that they also shouldn't be dividing it between them. The one of the understandings, the different understanding besides Rashi, is that you're telling it to them because they should at least know that they got both. In other words,
there's a note here. There's a note here. He says that each kohen was required to say, "Here's matzah for you, and here's the chametz bread for you," to each individual kohen. It's not to be distributed simultaneously. The kohen must know what he has received and what he has yet to receive.
And what does that add to what we? I'm not really sure if that's adding much. What does that mean, even? What he's receiving and what he's yet to receive? What does it mean? He's what's yet to receive? You're handing him both. This is chametz. This is matzah.
It's not done simultaneously, and the kohen has to know what he's received and what is coming to him, what he's yet to receive.
Mm-hmm. 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 Well, okay. Yeah, that's interesting. The Gemara will mention that one of them was given first. You know which one? In other words, they weren't given simultaneously, like you're saying. But the reason the Gemara mentions that is not because they should know what they're going to receive. The Gemara mentions it because one of them is much more often than the other. Obviously, the lechem hapanim is the tadir. The lechem hapanim is every week. the Shtei Halechem is once a year. It's on Shavuos. So you do the Lechem Apanim first, and then you would do the Shtei Halechem after. But the fact is that, I mean, they're getting one and then they're getting the other, and the Mishnah emphasizes that you have to tell them that. So again, one understanding is that the Kohen shouldn't think that he's getting one instead of the other. You know, he's only getting this, and he's not getting. Maybe that's what you mean, David. Is that what that means? That maybe that they shouldn't think that they got one in place of the other, and that they're not getting the other. Instead, that they're actually going to be getting the other as well. Don't think that we traded for you.
I only read to you the second half of the note. I'll read the whole note. It says that the Tanaim disagree in the Tosefta whether this is the note on the whole piece of here's the matzah for you and here's the chametz for you. So the Tanaim disagree in the Tosefta whether the showbread and the 2 loaves were distributed directly to the individual Kohen, or whether they were distributed to the head of each watch, who would then distribute them to the members of his watch. That's the first half. Then the second half. In any case, the Kohen was required to say, here's the matzah for you, here's the chametz for you, to each individual Kohen. As they were not distributed simultaneously, the Kohen must know what he has received and what he is yet to receive.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. Yeah. Maybe that's. But I think it means. I think is what it means to say is that the kohen shouldn't think that he's not getting one of the others, the other item. He's only getting one. I think that's what it means. But there is an understanding here. There's, you know, what you started mentioning, that he's really telling this to the head of the family. He's not giving it to each kohen. He's telling it to the head of the family. So there's one person in charge, and he's handing it over to the head of that mishmar. So he's giving it to the individual that's in charge of that one of the 24 mishmaris, and gives to the other one who's in charge of that one of the 24 mishmar. Each leader of their mishmar, and he's telling them, make sure to give everyone a portion of this and a portion of that. So that would be the understanding here, that Batseres on Shavuos Oimer Loi means the person who's distributing it to each of the families, not the individual kohen. Person distributing it to the kohen that's distributing it to the heads of the families. He tells each one, hey, loch matzah, hey, loch chametz, this is matzah, this is chametz. Like, make sure to give each person from both. But anyway, that's the understanding over here, the general understanding. Of course, different explanations that we've gone through, but the general understanding obviously is that everyone is getting a piece of the matzah and a piece of the chametz, piece of the shtei halechem, a piece of the lechem apanim, and a piece of the shtei halechem. They're all getting it. Now, mishmar shezmanoi kavua, a mishmar, the mishmar that their time is set for this week, meaning they're the ones who are really supposed to be doing the avodah, the service in the temple. Hu makriv tamidin, he brings the communal daily sacrifices, the korban tamuz. Those are the 2 lambs every day, the morning lamb and the afternoon lamb. And he also brings the nedarim unedavais, and the promised sacrifices, 2 types of promises. There's the neder promise and a nedava type of promise. A neder promise is where someone says, I'm going to bring a korban shlamim, a peace offering. And a nedava says, I'm bringing this one as a peace offering. And nedava is more, you're specifying which which animal is actually being brought. Both of those are brought. Which Kayanim get to do those sacrifices when you bring it on the holiday, and someone donated a sacrifice during the year, and they brought it now. They brought it now because they're coming to Israel, to Jerusalem. They're coming anyway to celebrate. So they brought that sacrifice with them. It's called a neder or a nedava. So who gets to bring that to do the service? Which kayanim? So those are only the specific weeks kayanim. Those are the ones who get to bring those sacrifices. The rest of the families of kayanim, they are only allowed to put their nose in for the holiday stuff, not when you're bringing your sacrifice that you promised to bring. That's not a holiday sacrifice. That's a regular sacrifice that you happen to bring now on the holiday, but it's not specifically connected to the holiday. That does not go to every kayin. It's only the week. That's the weekly group. That's this week. That they're the ones who get to bring that. Usha'ar korbanos tzibor, and also other communal sacrifices. They also get to bring the communal, the weekly card. Those that have the this week as that's their week, they get to bring the other communal sacrifices. V'makriv es hakol, and they bring all of the sacrifices, anything that's not connected to the holiday. They're the ones who are going to get to bring it. And the Gemara is going to discuss what that refers to. What are these sacrifices that we're referring to? But basically, this is how it's divided up. Anything to do with the holiday, everyone gets a chance. Anything to do with not the holiday, only the weekly group gets to participate, brings those sacrifices. There is one exception, and that's the lechem hapanim, the bread, the lechem hapanim, and not regarding the service of them, not regarding the avodah of the lechem hapanim, the way it was, not regarding the way it was, what was done with it, only regarding, meaning taking it off, that was this week's group, but the eating of it was everyone. Everyone got to partake. Special law about the partaking, the eating of the lechem hapanim, that was unique. That went to the entire group of kayanim. All 24 families got to partake of the lechem hapanim of that fell on Yontif. Okay, we're going to stop here. I want to wish all of you a good Shabbos.